Well, I sat down to record one video, I might as well record another while I'm at it. The topic of today's video has been on my mind a lot recently. I don't particularly know why, but for some reason I've been thinking about it a lot. So today we're not going over a piece of writing to revisit, but I do want to revisit something, specifically a roster. A roster for what, you may ask? Well, humble viewer, today I wish to discuss it should be no surprise, since I have done a number of videos about Sonic the Hedgehog in the past, that growing up I was a huge fan of the Sonic Riders games. And much like everyone else on this planet with a functioning brain, I missed the Sonic Riders series, because I grew up when the Sonic Riders games were coming out. In fact, I remember pretty plainly that when Sonic Free Riders got announced, I was upset because we didn't have an Xbox 360. Or a PS3 for that matter. So a next-gen Sonic Riders game kind of rubbed me the wrong way just off of that. But I did own and play the hell out of Sonic Riders and Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. So today I want to revisit not necessarily a roster that I came up with, but with rosters for each of the individual Sonic Riders games, and then I want to also cover the rosters for the mods of the first Sonic Riders game. I guess technically we'll also be going over the roster for Sonic Riders Zero Gravity Re-Gravified, which is a mod for Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, but based on the website here, it looks like they haven't added any new characters to it, so when we go over Zero Gravity, we'll basically be going over the roster for the mod for it. So here's the roster for Sonic Riders, the first one. None of these icons are of the art that is present in Sonic Riders, but I didn't really feel like going through the hassle of getting all of those artworks and making individual icons for them. To that point, the Sonic Riders character art style is very unique and very great, but I'm more interested in discussing which characters were in the games rather than how they were drawn. I'm not going to read off any of the characters because, I mean, you can see which ones are which. I will say that it was a little bit annoying to have both E10000G and E10000R, but this game was developed by Sonic Team, and Sonic Team doesn't exactly have a reputation for the most lenient of work schedules. So the fact that two of the characters are basically the same and one of them is just a slight recolor of the other is fine. Although I will say, it did annoy me as a young whippersnapper that they only cover two of the three main character archetypes in this game. G is power from what I remember, and R is speed. So where's the fly type E10000? It always just bothered me. It also always bothered me that Supersonic was the only super transformation in the game. Like, why is it that Sonic is the only one with access to the Chaos Emerald Extreme Gear, quote unquote? Because Knuckles has a super form. I know they kind of tried to bury that one at the time that this game was released, but even Shadow had a super form, and they have never tried to get rid of that one, or otherwise scrub it from Sonic history, so why doesn't Shadow have a super form? One last point on the original roster. I'm pretty sure the only reason I ever bought Super Monkey Ball Deluxe for the PlayStation 2 was because Ai was in this game. I didn't really care about Knights or Ulala, but I'm pretty sure Ai's presence was why I ever got Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. Okay, so next, we have the roster for Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. I appreciate that the only characters that got cut between these two games were the E10000 units, which got replaced by SCR GP and SCR HD. I guess technically Ai and Ulala got the axe as well, but we still got three guest best characters, and if I'm being 100% honest, I think Amigo and Billy Hatcher fit a lot better than, at the very least, just Ooh-La-La. Ai-Ai's kind of in the middle there, because he's a cartoon animal, you know, return to monkey. But just as I just said, it still bothers me that Super Sonic is the only super form in the game. You've already got the Chaos Emerald asset, so why not just make it selectable for the other characters? And it's even worse because now you have Shadow the Hedgehog and Silver the Hedgehog, both of whom had super forms in Sonic 06. I understand that Sonic 06 was not a particularly well-received game, but in the case of Shadow and Silver, aren't they practically recolors of their base models anyway? And you've already got the, like, golden glow effect that Super Sonic has, so why? Why not? Again, I just have a feeling that Sonic Team was being pushed towards a schedule that precluded them from including those super forms. Now for the last official Sonic Riders roster, Sonic Free Riders. Now, I'm not going to talk about quality of Sonic Free Riders as a game because, as I just said, I never had an Xbox 360, so I never got to play it, and based on the video by Jay's reviews that I watched, I don't really feel like I was missing that much, even as a child / preteen. The roster, though, makes some very baffling decisions, and some really good ones at the same time, might I add. Like, Metal Sonic being a character is such a good choice that it honestly is kind of confusing that it wasn't done earlier. You can excuse Sonic Riders not having included Metal, but Zero Gravity I feel like maybe should have included Metal Sonic. Vector being there without Espio and Charmy is, however, a very baffling decision. I understand the reasoning to a certain extent, because Big the Cat wouldn't have really made sense on the baseline boards. On the bikes and maybe the wheels that were present in Zero Gravity, Big may have made sense, but having Vector be the third wheel for Amy Rose and Cream the Rabbit just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. E10000G being back makes sense if you want to go with what they went with, which was E10000B being a disguise for Metal Sonic. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense though, because we already had E10000R, which was the speed type of the E10000 series, so why didn't you bring back E10000R? Also, E10000B being blue kind of predicts the reveal that it's Metal Sonic, does it not? And it is not as though Metal Sonic has not taken on red forms or transformations, because Metal Sonic Kai was a thing in the classic era. Just baffling to me, honestly. The Avatar, I mean, it's like the Mii's in Mario Kart. I feel like if you have access to something like that, you gotta do it. Copy and paste everything I said about the super forms once again, because Super Sonic, I believe, is the only selectable super form in the game. But okay, now we get to the fun part. There are two mods for Sonic Riders. I have not played either of them, just to be 100% transparent, but I was able to find their rosters online and make them in SSB Roster Maker. The first of these two mods is Sonic Riders DX, and if I don't recall correctly, I think this one has been discontinued. It is no longer under development actively as of July 14th, 2024. Yes, this video was recorded in the past. Obviously, it keeps the base roster of Sonic Riders, which was decent, but it makes some additions. It adds Metal Sonic, which, as I just said in the Sonic Free Riders section, was a good move, and I'm glad that they kind of put Metal Sonic back into the original Sonic Riders. Partially because I feel like if they had made a sequel to Sonic Free Riders or were to reboot the franchise, I feel like they would probably go a route that is similar to the first Sonic Riders game, and as I said, I feel like Metal Sonic would have fit very well in that environment, so it was a good move. Next, Silver the Hedgehog. I am personally a huge fan of Silver, but considering he was in Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, this also makes sense. Now, if it weren't for the fact that I believe this mod has been discontinued, I would also expect to have seen Blaze the Cat in here, but again, I think it's been discontinued. Chaos Zero is a very strange choice. Unlike Big the Cat, I do feel like I could see Chaos Zero mounting an extreme gear of any kind, excluding maybe the skates, and I feel like it would be able to pull off the moves. I do think the next mod that we're going to go over adds something that I think justifies the inclusion of Chaos Zero for a rather nerdy reason, but I'll explain it when we look over that roster. But they finally addressed what I have cited as a problem, and that's that now characters other than Sonic can access the super forms. So they gave Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Shadow access to their super forms. I know I have it listed next to the Chaos Emerald here. To be completely honest, I don't know which gear Super Tails uses to go super, but since Sonic uses the Chaos Emerald to go super, I would assume that Super Tails also uses it here, and Hypersonic is the only hyper form accessible in the game, and I have a feeling, again, I don't know for a fact, but I think Hypersonic utilizes a Super Emerald gear to turn into Hypersonic. If I'm being honest, if it isn't this way in the mod as it stands, Super Tails should only be accessible through the Super Emerald. It is my personal headcanon that the only reason Super Tails even exists is because the Super Emeralds basically supercharge him with so much energy that he cannot but help to turn into a super form, whereas I feel as though the Chaos Emeralds should only be usable to turn into a super form by those who are mature enough to understand its energies and utilize them to turn into a super form. But that's just me. And then last we have Sonic Riders Tournament Edition. I will confess, I personally do not understand how Sonic Riders was turned into a game that has 1v1 tournaments. But again, we're only here to talk about the roster. And as you can probably tell, they made a few more additions. Now, they seem to have replaced E10000R with E10000B, but Silver and Blaze are along for the ride, which, as I said, was a good idea. Chaos Zero is also back from Sonic Riders DX, but I love the inclusion of Tikal, because even though I know Chaos Zero has shown up on its own in, for example, Sonic Battle, which I did play as a child, but the fact that Tikal is present with Chaos Zero kind of satisfies the desire for a lore explanation in my brain, because at least then Chaos Zero could be justified as only being there because Tikal is there, and Tikal is keeping it calm and out of trouble. Ignore the fact that that said Gemerald for a few minutes there. Technically, it's only Emerald that is now playable in Sonic Riders Tournament Edition. I don't really have any strong feelings about Emerald's inclusion, but again, they added Metal Sonic. Now, this is where Sonic Riders Tournament Edition adds several characters, and before I start going over those characters, please note that the only characters that are visible on the website are the characters that are at or above the level of Emerald and Metal Sonic. The other ones I've only seen in trailers that I saw on YouTube while I was doing research for this video. Apparently, Rila, Hatsune Miku, and Gongon either are slated for release, were slated for release, or were planned and scrapped. I'm not super involved with the Sonic community anymore, so I have no idea what the status of those characters is. But I also saw a trailer for Vector, Charmy, and Espio, which those three I think are a really good addition because they already added Vector to Free Riders, so it's clear that at least Vector could have been added to these games. And if you add Vector, I feel like you're obligated to add Charmy and Espio. Now, I know for a fact that they added Super Tails, Super Knuckles, Super Shadow, and Neo Metal Sonic, but they also added Hypersonic and also a Super Neo Metal Sonic, the latter of which was apparently added in the IDW comics, which I haven't followed, obviously, because I stopped really actively following Sonic stuff after the Archie Sonic comic cancellation that was incurred by Ken Penders. But if I'm being 100% honest, while I am not mad at the inclusion of some of the super forms that that Tournament Edition added to Sonic Riders. The specific gear that you have to select to choose those super forms, I don't really understand. Maybe there's some mod-related technical issues that have influence over that, or maybe it's a balancing thing, I don't know. But I'm just saying it's a little bit strange to someone who isn't fully aware of the intricacies of Sonic Riders modding. And last but not least, this is not a roster for any official mods or projects or products, but this is personally what I would do if you put me behind the captain's wheel for a new Sonic Riders series entry or mod or what have you. So, a couple things to note. I do really like the idea of Tikal and Chaos kind of being a duo that you add to these games. So kudos to the Sonic the Hedgehog modding community for adding these characters to Sonic Riders, because I see the appeal now. Blaze and Silver I feel like have to be retained, as well as Metal Sonic, but I also added the modern iterations of Ray and Mighty, because the classic timeline, the classic world, do not exist. All of the Sonic games exist in the same timeline, and honestly, I don't really give a shit, pardon my language. I don't really care about what Sega says about the official timeline. All of the games exist in the same timeline. Mighty and Ray can both exist in Sonic Riders in the present day as teenagers, preteens, what have you, and everything is fine. As you can see here, I also colored their squares according to the typings that I think they would have. Ray would obviously be a flight type, and Mighty would be a power type. Now, Mighty could be a speed type, but I have a feeling just based on how he has been characterized over the years, power might make more sense. Next up, we have Team Hooligan, and that's Bean the Dynamite, Fang the Sniper, Slashnack the Weasel, and Bark the Polar Bear, who I know cameoed in Sonic Mania, but I feel like they'd be perfect for Sonic Riders. I feel like Sonic Riders is a perfect place to just have a ton of characters show up. It's a party racing game. And then last, for the standalone characters, I have Espio the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, and Charmy the Bee, which again, just feel like obvious choices, especially considering that Sonic Riders came out during the Sonic Heroes era. I was honestly more surprised that Silver and Blaze got into zero gravity. I'm going to go through the rest of the character icons that I have on SSB Roster Maker to add potential characters and talk about them, much like I did in my Godzilla Save the Earth Melee predictions video, which is probably way out of date at this point, considering I'm recording this video on July 14th, 2024. But I'm going to go over the super forms first. First, much like all the other mods have done, I think a lot of characters should have access to the Chaos Emerald power-up. Super Knuckles should have been in the games for a long time. Shadow and Silver, duh. Super Amy. Has Amy gotten a super form in recent years? I'll probably look that up after this video, but that's something that was done in fan art for years. So if it's canon now, I wouldn't be surprised. I also believe that Super Mighty and Super Ray are characters that have been added in Sonic Mania. If they have hyper forms, I really don't see a need in giving them hyper forms, and to be 100% honest, if Ray has a super form, I think it should be under the Super Emerald gear. And then I have Neo Metal Sonic, and I have Gemerald, which, just to circle back, Emerald is kind of just hanging out beside the rest of the characters in the roster that I made the other day. If you add Emerald, I feel like Gemerald is just a hop and a skip away from being included, and I feel like if you're going to include Gemerald, just make it a transformation for Emerald that you can only access if you choose the Chaos Emerald Extreme Gear. Next up, we have the Super Emerald Extreme Gear, which I would have give you access to Hypersonic, Hyper Knuckles, Super Tails, and Super Ray, because like I said, I think Super Ray and Super Tails should only be accessible through a Super Emerald, because the Super Emerald should just be that powerful that even though they're young and can't really control the forms very well, they now have access access to super forms through the Super Emerald and its vast quantities of chaos energy. Super Neo Metal Sonic is only accessible through the Super Emerald because apparently, based on the wiki that I read, Metal Sonic turned into Neo Metal Sonic and then turned into Super Neo Metal through use of the Master Emerald, which gives the Super Emeralds their power. Hence its placement there. And then the next ones are just kind of things that I think would be really nice to have as transformations and extra extreme gear to access those transformations. And that's a Soul Emerald to give Blaze her Burning Blaze super transformation, a World Ring extreme gear to give us access to Darkspine Sonic, and Excalibur to give us access to the Excalibur Sonic transformation. All three of those could honestly be slashed, but the thing is, at least in the case of Burning Blaze and Darkspine Sonic, I feel like they're just mostly model texture changes. And I mean, the Sonic fan base has been modding and making fan games for years, so I don't really see why you wouldn't have access to, at the very least, a model and texture that has those forms. Excalibur Sonic is a little extraneous. I think that's just me kind of dreaming up ideas. It would be pretty neat. Okay, now let me go through all the icons that I have, and I'll just add anybody that might be cool to see in a Sonic game. No, I do not believe the avatar from Sonic Forces should be playable. This is the team of characters that probably have a snowball's chance in hell of getting included in anything Sonic related going forward, fan, mod, or official release. But I think these guys were from Tails Adventure or Tails Sky Patrol, and I feel like they work as the kind of speed, flight, power team that you could use in Sonic Riders. Don't like this character, and I really don't see why it would be a good idea to add them to a Sonic Riders game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Classic Sonic gets added to a Sonic Riders game in an official product in the future. Like I said, I wouldn't do that, but also, if you haven't noticed, I took out E10000G, R, and B, and I did not add SCR GP or SCR HD. As funny as it would be to see, I really don't think E102 Gamma or E123 Omega makes sense to include in a Sonic Riders game. I know we have 2/3 of Team Dark already, but Omega at the very least I don't really see as a gear riding entity. Gamma I feel like has just been completely left in the past. I wouldn't be mad if they added the Egg Pawn, although I will say it would be cooler if you added in the Egg Robo. I really would not like to see the hard-boiled heavies again. I'm sure many of them could show up, but those guys felt like one-off villains, and like I mentioned, the wonkiness of the Sonic Classic timeline crap probably precludes them from ever showing up again. I'm not going to give these guys a speed, flight, power typing, but Heavy and Bomb would be pretty cool. I really don't think they would show up as anything other than a 2-for-1 character. I'm going to put her in here, but she will probably never be put into a Sonic Riders game. Honey the cat might be cool. I know she's technically from a fighting game, but they have acknowledged her existence officially now, so maybe that would be cool. Now, I haven't played this character's game, and I also do not know how the Sonic fan base in general feels about this character, but maybe Infinite would be okay. Sonic Forces caught a lot of crap, but I never played it because that was released long after I started not caring about the Sonic franchise. I have icons for a lot of the Archie comics and Fleetway comics characters, but well, no, that's never gonna happen. Manic is never gonna happen either. I really don't see this happening, but I feel like Marine the raccoon from Sonic Rush Adventure riding on an extreme gear would be kind of cute. Oh, here's one. Methylase. Again, I know Sonic 06 has pretty much been exiled from the franchise and all official acknowledgement, but that might be cool. Metal Knuckles would be cool just to acknowledge its existence, because as far as I know, it was only in Sonic R. I don't know about the rest of you, but Nazo would be pretty awesome, but he's not real. Rocket Metal Sonic would be a cool transformation, but I feel like Neo Metal Sonic is enough. A a Shadow android would be kind of cool. It's basically just a retexture of Shadow though, so maybe that's just too lazy, I don't know. Now, I didn't include this on here originally, but you could just downgrade Excalibur to an extreme gear called the Sacred Sword, and you could basically just make it so that Silver, Knuckles, Jet, Blaze, Sonic, and Shadow all have access to their storybook Knights of the Round Table forms. I don't know if that would really warrant an inclusion, but I mean, I'm not making an actual game right here. I'm just plopping down icons into SSB Roster Maker. I guess similarly, it would maybe be kind of stupid, but maybe you could make like a Moon Metal Extreme Gear or like a Moon Metal Extreme Gear board, and you could have Sonic the Werehog be a transformation for a Moon Metal Extreme Gear. I don't know, that might be kind of cool. I'm gonna plop this one here, but again, much like the Focke-Wulf, Kawatita, Behringer trio, I doubt this would happen, but Speedy the Battle Cuckoo would be kind of neat. And I know the Archie Comics connected the Battle Cuckoo army to Babylon Garden, so you certainly wouldn't catch me complaining about that. I don't really like this character, but I also haven't watched the show that she is from, Styx the Badger. I feel like Marine the Raccoon would be moderately more entertaining. I don't know if I would put him under the Super Emerald, but I'm going to put him under the Super Emerald here. This is not an official transformation, but Super Eggman would be cool as hell. Although, hey, maybe it would make sense to have it be only for the Super Emeralds. Maybe you could explain it away as humans are not capable of accessing the Chaos energies nearly as well with just the base Chaos Emeralds. As I said with Metal Knuckles, Tails doll would be kind of cool just for the fact that it would no longer be stuck in Sonic R and only Sonic R. But I would have it so that you basically just select Tails doll, much like SCR GP and SCR HD in Zero Gravity. I wouldn't have it ride an actual board. I'd just have it kind of like float like a disembodied corpse. I guess since I added all the other Tails Adventure characters, Wendy Witchcart might make sense. I'd have her be the flight counterpart to Dr. Eggman, who is Power. And all the characters from Sonic Lost World, including Zavik, should never be in any other Sonic product ever again, official or unofficial. They are absolute trash. I saw a classic redesign of Zavik one time, which I did make into an icon, but other than that, I do not think those characters should ever show up in anything ever again. So my roster ended up being a little bit of a mess, but I just wanted to talk about Sonic Riders. Can I just do that? So yeah, those are my thoughts on who would be good for a Sonic Riders game roster. This isn't exactly a roster revisited because I did not make this roster years upon years upon years ago, but I just kind of wanted to go over those rosters, and many of them are from games that are quite a few years old at this point, so I guess maybe that's where the revisited part of this episode's title comes from. Overall, just let me know what your thoughts are on the character choices that I made, and just the character choices over the Sonic Riders franchise in general, and the roster choices made within the various mods for the Sonic Riders games. Because like many people, I feel like Sonic Riders is a very distinct brand of Mario Kart ripoff, racing spinoff for the Sonic franchise. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, I have transformed on the Wii U, but it just doesn't hit the same. Sonic Riders is just way past cool. Drop a like if you thought this video was way past cool. Drop a comment in the comment section telling me what you thought about my picks for another Sonic Riders game, unless your roster includes Chris Thorndike, in which case you're better off to just not leave a comment. Although, if your roster includes the Sonic Underground characters, I may be interested in listening to you. Subscribe if you so feel like it, although as I've said in previous videos, I do not know how frequently I will be able to upload videos past a certain point, but thank the wonders of technology and scheduling videos in advance that I was able to do this one today. Catch you on the flip side, guys.